Hades, a game I'm sure many are familiar with given the several Game of the Year awards it won in 2020, and a game I recently came to experience over the holidays. To say the game is a masterpiece is an understatement, and although I can go on and on for hours about the exciting gameplay and the immersive story, there are undoubtedly many other smarter people out there who have already covered these topics. Instead, what I want to talk about today is something I am personally very invested in. As a digital artist myself, I could not help but salivate over the gorgeous art that is sprinkled all throughout Hades. From the incredibly drawn character portraits to the lush, atmospheric environmental assets. And while no one can deny the beauty of the artwork, I wanted to find out why I was so enamored by the art of Hades and what sets it apart from the art of other games. So this video is just that. My little foray into the illustrations of the famed supergiant title. I also want everybody to know that these are just my opinions and observations as a digital artist, coupled with some research. And so if I'm wrong about something, please let me know in the comments below. First up, I want to take a look at a subtle feature or design choice that is present on almost every character. You see, when I first started playing Hades, I was just really blown away with how colorful the world and characters of Hades were. I have always struggled with picking colors for my own personal artwork, so I tried analyzing how the characters were colored, and once I did, something stood out to me. There were these little splotches of vibrant colors that were present in almost every character portrait. Nyx had a lot of neon yellows, blues, and purples. Ares has spots of pink, purple, red, and orange, and even our main character Zagreus, who arguably has the entire rainbow, has his main color palette being red, while hints of orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet adorn his various accessories. The clever use of these small areas of color allows the mind to, what I believe, subconsciously perceive the characters to be more colorful. A good example of this principle in motion comes from one of Gen Z's Twitter posts. Now, Gen Z is the genius art director of Supergiant Games, and she subsequently oversees all the visual components of Hades. Now, this piece I'm about to show you sees our beloved characters Zagreus, Megara, and Thanatos on a ship being chauffeured by Charon. I'll give you a second to take in the image and really absorb the colors and shadows that you see in the picture in front of you. Okay, now here it is after Jen adds in the visual touches I was talking about earlier. You can indeed notice the use of very vibrant colors. The river is colored in with a light blue that acts as a sort of light that is being emitted from the boat. The skin tones of the characters have also been brightened up from the previous image. But what is very important to note is, again, the little splotches of neon pinks, purples, and greens that are scattered along the picture. While the lighter colors are indeed a contributing factor to Hades' art style, the addition of these little splotches, these little areas of color, is something that is entirely unique to Hades. Speaking of unique to Hades, we can notice a stark difference when comparing Hades' art style to that of Supergiant's other games, Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre. Hades' art style and character portraits are all drawn in a very sharp, comic book-like aesthetic, while Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre's art style all resemble paintings. The biggest difference here can be seen in the presence of lines. Hades' assets all have black outlines, while those of Supergiant's other games are missing this entirely. What's more, Hades also uses the black shading and cell shading techniques. Black shading is when certain areas of the art uses black to denote shadows, as opposed to the softer colors of the painting-like art style. This allows the shadows to contrast greatly with the other colored areas. Normally, this technique is very simple to grasp, but it is truly very, very hard to master. But Hades does it so well that, as an artist, I wish I could shade in black like that. Cell shading, on the other hand, is when hard, crisp lines are used to denote the separation between light and shadow. And this type of shading is in direct contrast to soft shading, which is a kind of shading that uses soft edges, blended colors to separate light and shadow. This type of shading is more apparent in Supergiant's other titles, so it's nice to see Hades shake up the art style for a bit. The sharp line work, coupled with the clever use of black shading and cell shading, makes the art of Hades resemble that of a comic book or graphic novel. And it adds a nice touch, given that Hades is, of course, as much a roguelike as it is a visual novel. Aside from the character portraits, the environment of Hades is drawn beautifully as well. Each area has their own distinct color palette, and these color palettes help us distinguish each area clearly. Tartarus's color palette uses a lot of bright neon greens to signify a sort of toxic environment. Asphodel's reds and oranges are pretty self-explanatory given the area's volcanic environment. Elysium, meanwhile, uses a mix of blues, greens, and violets to exhibit paradise, where the blues represent water, the greens, the abundant flora and fauna, and the faint purples can either represent status, as purple meant royalty back then, or it can also remind us of grapes or wine, another symbol of opulence back then. The masterful use of color palettes allows each area to truly stand out to the players. Now lastly, I want to talk about the care and personality behind the designing of these characters, as opposed of course to the technical aspects I've been enumerating a while ago. Jen has made it very clear that she puts a lot of thought into designing the characters of Hades, and the attention to detail allows these characters to stand out. In the No Clip documentary I was watching the other day, which is a documentary that basically explores the process of how Supergiant came up with Hades, and I was in particular watching the third episode, the one where it explains the process of how they made their art and music. And Jen explains sort of her process and points to consider when designing someone like Asterius, or more popularly known as the Minotaur. As aside from the color palettes and the line work, Jen, along with the rest of the amazing art team, also has to think about a lot of other things when designing the Minotaur. Jen recounted about how something called the community mindshare concept shaped her decisions when designing the Minotaur, as, according to her research, people have always perceived the Minotaur as having only a Minotaur head, while the rest of the body was human. Concepts like these are factored in when designing a character. Jen also researches about how the character is written in real life, as for example in the case of Theseus, she even went as far as to find out how Theseus was depicted in ancient Greek pottery. This attention to detail gives the characters so much life and fictionality, while also making them slightly rooted in reality. This is, of course, not even mentioning the various design decisions that have to be made when designing characters for a game, as a character not only has to look good, its model also has to be seamless in the game as well, which is far beyond my realm of knowledge to analyze. Small details that only become apparent as you scrutinize the art also add a lot of charm into the characters, as these portraits are usually the only visual data people will have about this specific character, so it is thus very important to cram as much detail in as possible so that players can slowly notice all these things that make a character stand out. Some good examples of this can be like how Zeus' beard is shaped like the clouds, or how Chaos holds a tiny little earth in his fingers, or how Zagreus and Persephone have literally the same hairstyle, or how Nyx has a starry night imprinted on her hair, or how Dionysus is wearing a leopard cape, or how Hades' beard is literally the symbol of the underworld, and it is present in some way, shape, or form in any character with ties to the house of Hades. All these small details make each character feel unique and whimsical, and also allow us a peek into their personalities. Call it visual storytelling. Hades is a treat for the eyes. It is not only a game that plays well, but looks equally as stunning. One thing that I'd like to point out is that no singular technique mentioned above made Hades stand out visually, but rather it was the clever combination of all of these design choices that ultimately made Hades such a feast for the eyes. To put it very simply, as there are more nuances than that, Hades employs a colorful, angular graphic novel-like art style, and the art direction has indeed contributed to making Hades stand out from the sea of games being offered today. The art definitely fueled my appreciation and love for Hades, and by making this video, I hope I'm able to put out there what made the art of Hades stand out to me in the first place. I really hope you all learned something from this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. A like and subscribe would also be very appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.